Queen Liz humbly welcomes you to Maya Angelou's Rhythm of Resistance, biographical examination of Maya Angelou, framing her life as a journey from silence to global influence. Before we dive into this powerful story of Angelou's transformation from a traumatized child in the segregated South to a groundbreaking author and civil rights activist, please make sure to watch until the very end. If you find value in this story, hit the like button, leave a comment, and help us hype this video. It costs you nothing, but it truly helps push this message and support the growth of this channel. Now, let's begin. Maya Angelou's Rhythm of Resistance. Angelou's journey is a powerful story of transition, moving from the silence of her childhood in Stamps, Arkansas, to becoming a global voice of self-definition and resilience. After surviving a traumatic sexual assault at the age of 7, she entered a period of selective mutism that lasted for nearly 6 years. During this time in the segregated American South, she withdrew from spoken communication, believing her voice carried a dangerous, destructive power. However, this profound external quiet allowed her to develop a deep internal relationship with literature, poetry, and the cadences of the written word. Guided by mentors like Bertha Flowers and Stamps, she eventually reclaimed her spoken voice, discovering that self-expression was not a source of harm, but an essential tool for survival and liberation. This transformation from a silenced child to an iconic orator laid the foundation for her groundbreaking autobiographical work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which shattered literary taboos by openly discussing trauma, racism, and identity. Over the following decades, Angelou expanded her reach far beyond the page, working as a fierce civil rights activist alongside figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Her poetic masterpieces, including Still I Rise and Phenomenal Woman, evolved into universal anthems of dignity, refusing to let past systemic or personal pain dictate her value. By the time she made history reciting her poem On the Pulse of Morning at the 1993 presidential inauguration, Angelou had fully solidified her place on the world stage. She transformed her individual wounds into a collective framework for healing, demonstrating to millions that the ultimate act of resilience is the unapologetic courage to define oneself. Maya Angelou's life was a song composed of breaks and bridges, transforming deep childhood trauma into global prominence. Following a brutal sexual assault at age 7, she plunged into nearly 6 years of selective mutism in segregated Arkansas. This painful silence, however, became the fertile soil where her deep intimacy with language grew. Guided by local mentor Bertha Flowers, Angelou eventually reclaimed her voice, realizing that words were tools for liberation rather than destruction. Her poetry was a direct reflection of her survival, dignity, and unrelenting hope. Masterpieces like Still I Rise and Phenomenal Woman served as fierce anthems of self-definition, defiantly rejecting the boundaries of racism and personal history. She carried this resilient spirit into the civil rights movement, working alongside leaders like Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Her journey culminated on the world stage at the 1993 presidential inauguration. There, her historic recital proved that scars can be transformed into bridges of collective healing. Born Marguerite Annie Johnson, she grew up in the segregated town of Stamps, Arkansas, where systemic racism and poverty shaped daily life. Following a brutal childhood trauma at age 7, Marguerite retreated into complete silence for nearly 6 years. Believing her spoken words carried the power to cause death, she withdrew entirely from vocal communication, relying solely on deep observation and internal reflection. During this long period of mutism, her grandmother, Annie Henderson, provided a stable sanctuary, while a local educator named Bertha Flowers introduced her to classic literature and the cadence of poetry. Flowers gently challenged her to speak again, teaching her that language was an essential tool for survival, dignity, and self-expression. Through this vital mentorship, Marguerite slowly reclaimed her voice. This profound internal awakening laid the groundwork for her transformation into the iconic poet, author, and civil rights activist known globally as Maya Angelou. Her path to reclaiming her voice was intentional. It started with absolute silence, moved to an internal awakening guided by literature, and culminated in deliberate speech. Following a severe childhood trauma, her 6-year mutism was not a passive state, but a period of deep mental formatting. In the quiet of segregated Arkansas, she memorized vast amounts of poetry and literature, capturing the rhythms of Shakespeare, Dunbar, and the Bible. This internal repository found a catalyst in Mrs. Bertha Flowers, a sophisticated neighbor who recognized the young girl's hidden passion. Flowers threw a lifeline to her by stating that to truly appreciate poetry, it had to be spoken aloud. She required her to recite the written words she loved, framing speech not as a danger, but as an act of personal agency and power. This careful guidance transformed her silence into a conscious tool. When she finally chose to speak again, her voice emerged refined, purposeful, and fully equipped to challenge global injustices. At 16, she forged her independent identity by becoming San Francisco's first Black female streetcar conductor. Charmed by the crisp company uniforms, she pursued the wartime position relentlessly. When the Market Street Railway office initially refused to grant her an application because of her race, she staged a persistent, multi-day sit-in in their lobby until managers relented. She even altered her age on the paperwork to meet hiring criteria, proving her fierce determination to break discriminatory barriers. She also renamed herself Maya Angelou, signifying her independence and self-definition. Blending her childhood nickname Maya with a creative variation of her husband Tosh Angelos' surname, this rebranding was a conscious act of reinvention. By shedding her birth name, Marguerite Annie Johnson, she took complete ownership of her narrative, separating her future from past traumas. This pivotal era in California transformed her into a self-made woman, establishing the fearless autonomy that defined her legacy. Angelou's artistry was expansive, beginning with singing, dancing, and acting. During the 1950s, she vibrantly showcased these talents by touring 22 countries as a featured performer in the premier folk opera Porgy and Bess and releasing her studio album, Miss Calypso. Her refusal to be confined led her to tour the world, transition into journalism in Cairo, and explore new horizons. Driven by an insatiable hunger for global perspective, she relocated to Egypt in 1961. There, she boldly stepped into a male-dominated field to work as an associate editor for the English-language weekly newspaper, The Arab Observer. This international chapter widened her worldview and sharpened her political prose. She then moved to Ghana, deeply embedding herself in anti-colonial activism alongside African nationalists. By constantly shifting across continents and disciplines, Angelou transformed her creative expression into a borderless tool for international humanism, proving that her voice could never be restricted to a single medium or place. While in Ghana, she found a profound connection to the global Black identity. This immersion helped her see herself not just as an American, but as part of a massive, ongoing human story. Living in Accra during the early 1960s, Angelou joined a vibrant community of expatriate intellectuals who proudly called themselves revolutionary returnees. Working alongside legendary minds like W.E.B. Du Bois and Malcolm X, she eagerly embraced the burgeoning Pan-African movement. This critical era challenged and expanded her sense of self. As a feature editor for the African Review and an administrator at the University of Ghana, she shed the insular psychological confinement imposed by American segregation. Though she openly grappled with the nuanced complexities of truly returning to an ancestral home, the experience fundamentally realigned her artistry. She discovered a broader global lineage of resilience, realizing that the struggles and triumphs of Black people worldwide were deeply interwoven. Ghana served as her ultimate spiritual anchor, transforming her from a localized civil rights activist into an eloquent champion of universal human dignity. This illustration summarizes her journey. From the silence of Southern roots to the urban reinvention in San Francisco, artistic exploration abroad, and finally, her emergence as a global voice of resilience with Still I Rise. Her narrative is a masterclass in human transformation. The heavy silence forced upon her by childhood trauma in Stamps, Arkansas, morphed into a deep reservoir of literary strength. In San Francisco, she broke racial employment barriers and reauthored her own destiny by claiming the name Maya Angelou. Her insatiable curiosity then took her to Europe, Egypt, and Ghana, broadening her worldview and cementing her devotion to Pan-African humanism. When she penned Still I Rise, she consolidated these vast global textures into a definitive cultural manifesto. The poem became a defiant anthem against historical oppression, celebrating the unyielding power of the human spirit to conquer adversity. Angelou proved that personal history does not dictate personal limits. Instead, she transformed her deep wounds into universal bridges of healing. Angelou returned to the U.S. and joined the civil rights movement. The assassinations of leaders like Malcolm X and Dr. King brought devastating grief. But instead of retreating, she channeled her pain into creation for the movement's needs. She had come home at Malcolm X's request to help build the Organization of Afro-American Unity, only for him to be killed days later. Tragically, Dr. King was assassinated on her 40th birthday, plunging her into a profound depression that briefly returned her to silence. Encouraged by her close friend James Baldwin, she broke this dark isolation by turning to the typewriter. She realized that art was the ultimate weapon against political despair. Her resulting masterpiece, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, gave a searing voice to the millions of marginalized Black Americans who suffered under systemic violence. By translating raw personal tragedy and national heartbreak into triumphant, accessible literature, Angelou provided the movement with a mirror of its own resilience, proving that creative truth could outlast any assassin's bullet. The Caged Bird memoir deconstructs the weight of Angelou's struggles. The cage represents systemic limitations. The fearful trill is the struggle for self-identity, and the song is the unstoppable force of artistic creation and survival. In her groundbreaking autobiography, Maya Angelou transforms the extended bird metaphor into a stark sociological anatomy of life in Jim Crow America. The cage is built from interlocking bars of institutional racism, sexual violence, and crippling poverty, all designed to trap the spirit of the young Black girl. Yet the captive bird's fearful trill signifies that even when identity is suppressed by severe childhood trauma, the basic instinct for freedom cannot be erased. For Angelou, the cage door opened through the act of writing itself. The bird's song is a declaration of presence, a sonic refusal to be invisible. By documenting her scars with unapologetic honesty, Angelou illustrates that creativity is a vital act of defiance, demonstrating that even a heavily restricted life can produce a transformative cry for human dignity. Her poetry became a physical force. The repetition of rise in her famous poem Still I Rise is a declarative mechanism of survival, mirroring the persistence required to overcome systemic hate. By weaving the word rise throughout the stanzas like a rhythmic, driving heartbeat, Maya Angelou creates an escalating sense of momentum that mimics physical upward movement. This linguistic cadence acts as an unbreakable barrier against the heavy weight of historical and social oppression. The repetitive declaration is an active psychological refusal to be crushed by racism, sexism, or poverty. Every time the word is spoken, it builds a sonic architecture of defiance, turning a private vow of resilience into a shared cultural anthem. For Angelou, this poetic structure was not a mere literary choice, but a life-preserving strategy. The rhythmic repetition creates an energetic shift, demanding that the reader move from a state of passive witnessing to active endurance. It serves as an ultimate truth. No matter how deeply rooted the hatred, the human spirit possesses an innate, unstoppable momentum to overcome. With Phenomenal Woman, Angelou shifted from resistance to celebration. She redefined and claimed her beauty and strength herself without needing societal approval. Moving away from defensive reactions to systemic hate, the poem is a joyful manifestation of self-love and internal power. Angelou openly challenges Eurocentric fashion standards and the narrow, idealized physical proportions aggressively pushed by mainstream media. Instead, she boldly locates her allure in the natural rhythm of her stride, the curl of her lips, and the innate grace of her physical presence. This piece functions as a liberating manifesto for women who are routinely ignored by conventional beauty industries. By declaring her own body and spirit as phenomenal, Angelou completely strips society of its power to validate or diminish her worth. She frames womanhood not as an object for male approval, but as an expansive, spiritual force of nature. Through this poetic celebration, she teaches that true confidence originates from an unshakable inner peace, allowing personal strength to shine brightly without requiring external permission. In 1993, Angelou spoke truth to the global stage, delivering On the Pulse of Morning at President Clinton's inauguration. This moment transformed her abstract poetry into a shared, necessary truth for millions. Standing on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, she became the first Black woman and the first poet since Robert Frost in 1961 to recite a piece at a presidential inauguration. Her commanding voice resonated worldwide, reaching over 20 million television viewers and elevating the spoken word into a vital instrument of statecraft and national reflection. The poem served as a collective call for unity, environmental responsibility, and historical reckoning. By addressing a fractured nation directly, Angelou challenged citizens to confront the painful shadows of their past, including the scars of slavery and forced displacement, while looking toward a brighter, inclusive dawn. This historic broadcast stripped poetry of its academic isolation. It proved that literature could heal national trauma, cementing Angelou's legacy as a universal prophet of hope and a foundational voice for global human dignity. Angelou's voice evolved through three phases: the observer, marked by silence and deep listening; the rebel, defined by movement and self-definition; and the laureate, establishing shared truth through global statesmanship. In her first phase, the profound quiet of her childhood mutism in Stamps, Arkansas, allowed her to intensely absorb the cadences of local folklore, the rhythms of the Bible, and the pain of segregation, formatting her mind for brilliant literary documentation. She then transitioned into the rebel, a kinetic era of explosive personal growth. This phase was defined by her constant boundary pushing, from becoming San Francisco's first Black female streetcar conductor to her international activism in Cairo and Accra alongside Pan-African intellectuals. Finally, she emerged as the laureate, a revered global statesman whose words belonged to the world. Her historic 1993 inaugural recital cemented this status. By scaling her private insights into universal anthems, Angelou used her fully realized voice to offer humanity a collective architecture for healing, survival, and dignity. This slide summarizes the enduring rhythm of resistance in Maya Angelou's life, highlighting the influence of systemic oppression, personal trauma, and her limitless spirit. Her journey serves as a masterclass in converting extreme vulnerability into unyielding power. The heavy hand of systemic racism in the Jim Crow South and the severe childhood trauma of sexual violence threatened to completely erase her presence, pushing her into nearly 6 years of selective mutism. Yet this internal isolation became a sacred space for deep literary processing and observation, formatting a mind that would later challenge global injustices. Angelou's limitless spirit transformed her survival strategies into universal art. Her resistance was not passive. It was a rhythmic, active reclamation of her narrative through international civil rights activism, groundbreaking memoirs, and defiant poetry. By refusing to let external trauma dictate her internal worth, she offered humanity a blueprint for healing. Her life proved that the ultimate act of resistance is the courage to define oneself against all odds. The lifelong song of Maya Angelou is illustrated by the key milestones, from her 5 years of silence to her powerful voice for the nation. Her life operated like a grand musical composition, filled with harsh, disruptive breaks and beautifully constructed bridges. The foundational verses began in the oppressive environment of segregated Arkansas, where a devastating childhood trauma silenced her voice for nearly 6 years. Yet this profound quiet allowed her to absorb the deep cadences of literature and community struggle, transforming her internal world into a rich reservoir of creative power. As the melody of her life advanced, she added complex harmonies through global activism, journalism in Africa, and pioneering literature that shattered social taboos. Her journey reached its ultimate triumphant crescendo on the world stage during the 1993 presidential inauguration. By delivering a message of unity and resilience to millions, Angelou proved that her song was unstoppable, transforming personal scars into a timeless national anthem of hope. Though Maya Angelou passed in 2014, her legacy lives on in classrooms and movements worldwide. Her written words and recorded speeches remain core components of academic curricula, teaching new generations about racial justice, gender equity, and emotional resilience. Beyond school walls, her poetic manifestos continue to echo through modern civil rights demonstrations, serving as a vital blueprint for activists fighting systemic oppression. She did not merely write literature. She constructed a permanent home for human dignity that outlasts her physical presence, ensuring her insights remain highly relevant today. We conclude with her enduring advice: try to be a rainbow in someone's cloud. This famous quote captures her foundational philosophy of intentional empathy and radical kindness. Angelou understood that life inevitably brings dark storms of grief, prejudice, and despair. By urging individuals to become a source of light for others, she reframes survival as a collective, compassionate effort. Her life proves that while clouds are temporary, the impact of a generous spirit is entirely infinite. The end. If you liked this video and would like to see more content like this, please like, comment, and hype this and other Queen Liz videos. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free for you, and Queen Liz would be ever so grateful.